The snow fell in heavy sheets across the Wyoming territory, blanketing the wilderness in silence so profound it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. It was November 1878, and the frontier stretched endless and lawless, a place where survival mattered more than dignity, where broken souls learned to exist in solitude. In the dying light of dusk, Elias Boone crouched beside the frozen creek, his weathered hands checking the trapline. At 35, his face bore the map of a hard life, scars from war, lines etched by grief, and eyes that had seen too much death. The wind whipped through his thick beard as he reset the snare, his movements practiced and efficient. His dog, a half-wolf named Ghost, suddenly raised his head, ears pricked toward the eastern ridge. "What is it, boy?" Elias muttered, following the animal's gaze. Ghost rarely reacted to deer or elk. This was something else. The dog bolted toward the tree line, and Elias followed, his rifle already in hand. As he pushed through the pine branches heavy with snow, he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it. A whimper. Human. There, collapsed against the trunk of an ancient fir, was a figure in a torn dress, barely visible beneath a dusting of fresh snow. Elias approached cautiously. It was a woman, young, her body curled into itself like a wounded animal. Blood streaked her face from a gash above her eye, and bruises, purple and yellow, covered her exposed arms. "Ma'am?" His voice was rough from disuse. He spoke so rarely these days. She flinched violently, scrambling backward even though she had nowhere to go. Her hands flew up to cover her face, and through chattering teeth she gasped, "Don't, don't look at me." Her voice broke. "I'm disgusting." Elias froze. He'd heard many things from dying people, prayers, curses, pleas for mercy, but never this kind of shame, this bone-deep self-loathing that made his chest tighten with unexpected pain. "You're hurt," he said simply, kneeling slowly so as not to spook her further. "You'll die out here if I leave you." "Good." The word came out as a sob. "That's what I want. Let me die. Nobody wants me anyway. Nobody ever—" Her words dissolved into crying, harsh and raw. Elias studied her for a long moment. She was fuller figured than the rail-thin women he'd seen in town, with soft features and hair the color of autumn wheat, now matted with blood and snow. Her dress, cheap calico, was torn at the shoulder, and her feet were wrapped in rags that had once been stockings. Something in her brokenness called to something equally broken in him. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer, just shook her head, her whole body trembling. "My name's Elias Boone. I live about 2 miles west of here. I'm going to carry you there. You can decide what to do come morning, but you're not dying tonight. Not if I can help it." "Why?" The question came out strangled. "Why would you help me? Look at me. I'm fat. I'm ugly. You're a human being who's hurt." He cut her off, his tone sharper than intended, then softer. "That's all that matters right now." Before she could protest further, he scooped her up. She was heavier than the delicate women of town, yes, but solid and warm and very much alive. She went rigid in his arms, then limp, as if all fight had drained from her. As he carried her through the darkening forest, she whispered against his chest, "My name is Clara, Clara Mayfield." "Hold on, Clara Mayfield," he murmured. "Just hold on." Elias's cabin was small but well built, tucked into a clearing protected on 3 sides by rock formations. Smoke rose from the stone chimney, and the warm glow of firelight spilled from the single window. Inside, the space was sparse but clean, A bed in one corner, a table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with preserved food and ammunition, and furs piled near the hearth. He laid Clara on his bed, the only bed, and she immediately tried to curl away from him, facing the wall. "I need to clean those wounds," he said, already heating water over the fire. "Don't waste your supplies on me. They're my supplies to waste." As he worked, cleaning the gash on her head, applying salve to the bruises that mapped violence across her skin, he noticed she kept her eyes squeezed shut, not from pain, but from something deeper. Shame. "Who did this to you?" he asked, wrapping a clean cloth around her head. "My stepfather and some men from his saloon. They were drunk. They made a bet about who could make the fat girl cry first." Her voice was hollow. "I ran. I kept running until I couldn't anymore. I thought if I went deep enough into the forest, I could just disappear." Elias's jaw tightened. He'd seen cruelty during the war, men capable of terrible things. But this casual brutality toward a defenseless woman stirred something dark in him. "You're safe here," he said finally. "They won't find you." "Safe?" She laughed bitterly. "I've never been safe anywhere." He stood, moving to the fire. "There's stew. You need to eat." "I shouldn't. I'm already too—" "You're starving." His tone left no room for argument. "When was the last time you ate?" "I don't remember." It was barely a whisper. He ladled a bowl and brought it to her, setting it on the small table beside the bed. Clara sat up slowly, wincing, her eyes still downcast. When she finally looked at the food, he saw hunger war with shame on her face. "Eat," he said gently. "Please." Her hand trembled as she picked up the spoon. The first bite brought tears to her eyes. Whether from relief or pain, he couldn't tell. She ate slowly, methodically, like someone who'd learned to fear satisfaction. Elias watched her from his chair by the fire, Ghost curled at his feet. He should have felt nothing. He'd trained himself not to feel for years. But something about this woman, this Clara, who'd been beaten down so thoroughly she'd tried to erase herself, cracked something in the armor around his heart. "Thank you," she said when the bowl was empty. Then softer, "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be a thief or—" "Are you? What? A thief?" "No, but then it doesn't matter." He poked at the fire. "Get some rest. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." "Where will you sleep?" "Got plenty of furs. Floor's fine." She looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. Within minutes, her breathing deepened into sleep. Though even unconscious, she curled into herself protectively. Elias lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling beams, and wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. For 5 years, he'd lived alone in these mountains, avoiding human contact, burying himself in routine and silence. He'd convinced himself he didn't need anyone, that solitude was safer than connection. But hearing Clara's broken voice, "I'm disgusting," had awakened something he thought long dead. Recognition. Because he understood that kind of self-hatred, that belief that you were somehow fundamentally wrong, unworthy of love or care. Ghost whined softly, nudging his hand. Elias scratched the dog's ears and whispered into the darkness, "What have I done, boy?" Clara woke to unfamiliar warmth and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she panicked, disoriented, before memory returned. The beating, the snow, the mountain man with the gentle hands and sad eyes. She sat up carefully, every muscle protesting. Elias stood at the stove, his back to her, pouring coffee into tin cups. Morning light streamed through the window, revealing details she'd missed in the darkness. The orderly arrangement of his tools, the books stacked on a shelf, the careful mending in his clothes. "You're awake?" he said without turning around. "Coffee?" Yes, thank you." He brought her a cup, and their fingers brushed during the exchange. She jerked back as if burned, and hot coffee sloshed over the rim. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." She grabbed at the blanket, trying to wipe up the spill, her hands shaking. "It's fine, Clara." His calm steadied her. "It's just coffee." She wrapped both hands around the cup, using it as a shield. In daylight, she could see him more clearly. The gray threading through his dark hair, the scar running from his left ear down to his jaw, the powerful build of a man who'd spent his life doing hard work. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something compelling about him. Something solid. "How do you feel?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her. "Like I was beaten half to death." A bitter smile. "Which I was." "The swelling's gone down. You'll heal." "On the outside, maybe." The silence stretched between them, not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. Finally, Clara forced herself to ask the question that had haunted her all night. "Why did you really bring me here? Men don't just help. Not without wanting something." Elias's expression darkened. "I'm not most men, and I don't want anything from you except for you not to die in my forest." "Your forest? Figure of speech?" He sipped his coffee. "But I've lived here long enough to feel responsible for it." "How long?" 5 years, give or take." "Alone?" "Alone." The word carried weight. Clara studied him, this strange mountain man who'd saved her life. "Why? Why what? Why alone? Why hide up here?" His jaw tightened. "Same reason you ran into the snow wanting to die, I'd wager. Sometimes the world's too much. Sometimes it's easier to disappear." The understanding in his voice brought unexpected tears to her eyes. "But you didn't disappear. You're still here, still living." "Surviving," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" He met her gaze fully for the first time, and Clara saw the depth of pain there. Whatever had driven him to these mountains had carved him hollow, just as her life had carved her. "Yes," he said quietly, "there is." Days passed, then weeks. Winter deepened its grip on the mountains, and Clara remained in Elias's cabin, not quite a guest, not quite a burden, but something undefined and fragile between them. At first, she tried to make herself invisible. She'd wake before him, tidy the cabin, prepare meals, then retreat to the corner with a book he'd offered her. She spoke little, avoided his eyes, and flinched whenever he moved too quickly near her. But Elias, for all his own damage, recognized someone trying to disappear into the walls. "You don't have to do all that," he said one morning, watching her scrub his already clean floor. "I need to earn my keep." "You don't owe me anything." She sat back on her heels, her expression haunted. "Everyone's owed something. That's how the world works. And people like me, we always owe more than we can pay." "People like you? You know what I mean." Her voice dropped. "Fat, ugly, useless, the kind of girl men bet on making cry for entertainment." Elias felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at every person who'd made her believe such lies. He knelt beside her carefully, keeping distance between them. "Clara, look at me." She shook her head. "Please." Slowly, reluctantly, she raised her eyes. He saw fear there, and pain, and the terrible expectation of mockery. "You're not any of those things," he said firmly. "You're a woman who survived something most folks wouldn't. You're strong enough to run through a blizzard rather than stay somewhere you were being hurt. That's not useless. That's brave. I'm not brave. You're here. You're alive. That takes courage. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You're just saying that because you feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for you. I feel angry at the people who made you hate yourself this much. He stood, offering his hand. Come on, I'm going to teach you something. What? How to shoot? The snow had stopped, leaving the world crystalline and bright. Elias set up targets, pine cones on a fallen log, and handed Clara his lighter rifle. Why are you doing this? She asked, the weapon awkward in her hands. Because every person should know how to defend themselves. He positioned himself behind her, adjusting her stance. And because you need to know you're capable of more than you think. His hands on her shoulders should have frightened her, but somehow they didn't. His touch was impersonal, instructive, careful. Line up the sight with the target. Breathe out slowly. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull. The shot went wide, startling a flock of ravens from a nearby tree. Clara lowered the rifle, disappointment clear on her face. Again, Elias said simply. They spent an hour in the cold, her shots gradually improving. When she finally hit a target, the pine cone exploding into fragments, she let out a surprised laugh, the first genuine sound of joy Elias had heard from her. I did it! She turned to him, her face lit with amazement. Did you see? I actually hit it. And Elias, looking at her flushed cheeks and bright eyes, her body animated with excitement rather than fear, thought, she's beautiful. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Not beautiful despite her fuller figure, but beautiful in the way she moved, the way her spirit was starting to peek through the armor of self-hatred. Beautiful in her determination, her gentleness with Ghost, the way she'd started humming while cooking when she thought he couldn't hear. You did, he managed, his voice rougher than intended. You did real good. Something in his tone made her self-conscious again. The light dimmed in her eyes, and she handed back the rifle. Thank you for teaching me. As they walked back to the cabin, Elias felt the familiar panic rising. He was starting to care, starting to look forward to her presence, to the sound of her voice, to the way she made the cabin feel less like a tomb and more like a home. And that terrified him, because everyone he'd ever cared about had died. His wife, Mary, his daughter, little Sarah, who'd been only 4 years old. He'd been off scouting for the Union Army when the fever came through their town. By the time he got home, they were already in the ground. He'd stood at their graves and made a promise, never again, never let anyone close enough to lose. But Clara was burrowing under his defenses, and he didn't know how to stop it without hurting her. And somehow, hurting her had become unthinkable. It was late January when the nightmare came. Elias woke to screaming, Clara's voice raw with terror. He was on his feet instantly, moving to the bed where she thrashed against invisible attackers. No, please don't. I'll be good. I promise I'll... Her words dissolved into sobs. Clara. He touched her shoulder gently. Clara, wake up. You're safe. Her eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. For a moment she didn't recognize him, and her fist swung out, catching him on the jaw. He caught her wrists carefully, holding them until recognition dawned. Elias. Her voice was small, broken. I'm here. You're safe. It was just a dream. But it wasn't just a dream, and they both knew it. It was memory, the kind that doesn't fade with waking. She collapsed against him, sobbing into his chest, and Elias wrapped his arms around her without thinking. She was solid and warm and shaking like a leaf, and something in him cracked wide open. "I can still hear them laughing," she whispered, "still feel their hands. They pulled my hair and called me names and said I should be grateful anyone wanted to touch me at all, even as a joke. My stepfather just watched, just stood there drinking and laughing with them." Elias's arms tightened around her. They were wrong. Every single one of them was wrong. But what if they weren't? What if I really am— Stop! He pulled back enough to look at her face, tear-streaked and vulnerable in the firelight. "Clara, listen to me. You are not what they said you were. You are not your stepfather's punching bag or those men's entertainment. You're Clara Mayfield, and you're brave and kind and—" He stopped, the next word catching in his throat. "And what?" she whispered. "Beautiful." The word came out hoarse. "You're beautiful, Clara." She went very still. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't lie to me. Don't pretend. I've had enough of men's lies to last a lifetime." "I'm not lying." "Then you're blind." She tried to pull away, but he held her gently, giving her the option to break free if she wanted. She didn't. "I'm not blind. I see you, Clara. Maybe for the first time someone actually sees you." He took a shaky breath. "You want to know the truth? Every morning I wake up and wonder how the hell I got so lucky that you stumbled into my forest. Every time you laugh, which isn't nearly enough, it makes this cabin feel less like a place I'm hiding and more like a place I want to be. You make me feel human again, and I didn't think that was possible." "Elias," her voice broke on his name, "you don't have to say anything. I know I'm too old for you, too damaged, but I needed you to know that you are not disgusting. You never were, and anyone who made you feel that way was trying to cover up their own ugliness." Clara stared at him, her eyes wide with something he couldn't quite read. Then, slowly, carefully, she reached up and touched his face, the scarred side, the part he usually tried to keep angled away from people. "You're not too old," she whispered, "and we're all damaged. Some of us just wear it on the outside more than others. Clara, kiss me." "What?" "Please, I need to know if this is real, if you mean it." Elias hesitated. This was dangerous territory. This was the edge of the cliff he'd been carefully avoiding for 5 years. But her eyes held such hope, such desperate need to be wanted, that he couldn't deny her. He cupped her face in his weathered hands and kissed her softly, gently, like she was something precious. She made a small sound against his mouth, surprise or relief or joy, he couldn't tell, and kissed him back with the fervor of someone who'd been starving and was finally allowed to eat. When they broke apart, both breathless, Clara was crying again, but these tears were different. "I believe you," she whispered. "I finally believe you." But belief was fragile, and old wounds ran deep. Over the following weeks, as winter grudgingly gave way to early spring, Elias watched Clara bloom like a flower breaking through snow, and simultaneously felt his own demons rising. He loved her. God help him, he loved this woman who hummed while cooking, who'd learned to shoot almost as well as he could, who read him passages from books by the fire and fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, who kissed him with such sweetness it made his chest ache. And that love terrified him more than any enemy he'd faced in war. "You're pulling away," Clara said one morning as he prepared to check his trap lines. She'd grown bolder, more confident in reading his moods. "I can feel it." "I'm not. Liar. There was no heat in the word, just sadness. Did I do something wrong? No. He turned to face her, seeing the insecurity creeping back into her posture. Clara, you could never. Then what is it? Every time we get close, you retreat. Is it because of my body? Because I'm not. Don't finish that sentence. He crossed to her, tilting her chin up. Your body is perfect. You are perfect. That's not what this is about. Then what? He pulled away, running a hand through his hair. How could he explain the nightmares where he came home to find her dead? The irrational fear that if he loved her completely, the universe would take her away like it had taken Mary and Sarah? I lost people, he said finally, my wife and daughter. They died while I was away, and I couldn't save them. I swore I'd never let anyone that close again because I couldn't. I can't go through that kind of loss again. Understanding dawned in Clara's eyes. So you're protecting yourself by keeping me at arm's length. I'm protecting both of us. No, her voice was firm. You're choosing fear over love. And I understand that, Elias, I do. I've spent my whole life choosing fear. Fear of being seen, fear of being hurt, fear of taking up space in the world. But you know what? I'm tired of being afraid. She moved closer, taking his hands. I could die tomorrow. You could die tomorrow. We could get sick, or a tree could fall on us, or 100 other things could happen. But that doesn't mean we should stop living. That doesn't mean we should deny ourselves this. She gestured between them. Whatever this is, because we're scared. Clara, I love you. The words tumbled out, raw and honest. I love you, Elias Boone. And maybe that makes me foolish. Maybe I'm setting myself up for heartbreak. But I'd rather have loved you and lost you than never have known this feeling at all. Elias stared at her. This woman who'd been so broken she'd wanted to die in the snow, now standing before him with such courage it shamed him. She was right. They were both right. Love was risk. But maybe, just maybe, the risk was worth it. I love you too, he said roughly, pulling her into his arms. God help me, I love you so much it scares the hell out of me. She laughed against his chest, the sound watery with tears. Good, we can be scared together. Together, he echoed, and kissed her like a promise. Spring in the Wyoming Territory was deceptive. Beautiful one day, deadly the next. Elias should have known better than to let Clara come with him to check the far trap lines, but she'd been so excited to see the valley in bloom, and he'd been unable to deny her anything lately. They were 2 miles from the cabin when Ghost suddenly went rigid, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Elias! Clara moved closer to him instinctively. He heard it then. Horses. Multiple riders. His hand went to his rifle as 4 men emerged from the tree line, their faces hard and their weapons drawn. Well, well, the lead rider said, a scarred man with cruel eyes. Elias Boone. Been looking for you. Don't know what you want with me, friend, Elias said carefully, positioning himself in front of Clara. But I'm not interested. Not about what you want. There's a price on your head. $500 for killing Jack Monroe in Missouri. Elias's blood ran cold. Jack Monroe, a Confederate sympathizer who'd tried to murder a family of freed slaves after the war. Elias had stopped him, and yes, Monroe had died in the confrontation. But it had been self-defense, witnessed by a dozen people. That was 7 years ago, and it was ruled justified. Maybe in a Union court, Monroe's family sees it different. They want justice. We just want the money. The man's gaze slid to Clara. That's your woman? Leave her out of this. Pretty thing, ain't she? Round in all the right places." The other men laughed. "Maybe we take her too. Payment for our trouble." Clara's hand found Elias's arm, squeezing tight. He could feel her trembling, but when she spoke, her voice was steady. "Touch me, and you'll regret it." The men laughed harder. "Got some spirit. I like that. Makes it more fun." Everything happened in seconds. Elias raised his rifle, dropping the lead rider before the man could blink. Ghost launched at another, teeth finding throat. Clara grabbed Elias's pistol from his belt and fired, the shot wild but close enough to make the third rider duck. The fourth man got off a shot that grazed Elias's ribs, sending him stumbling. "Elias!" Clara's scream was primal. She fired again, and this time her aim was true. The man fell. The remaining rider, seeing his companions dead or dying, turned his horse and fled. Ghost gave chase for a few yards before returning at Elias's whistle. Clara dropped the pistol and fell to her knees beside Elias, her hands immediately pressing against his bleeding side. "No, no, no. You can't. You promised we'd be scared together, and you can't." "I'm okay." He caught her hands, wincing. "It's just a graze. Clara, look at me. I'm okay." But she was shaking uncontrollably, the reality of what had just happened crashing over her. "I killed someone. I killed a man. You saved my life." He pulled her against him, ignoring the pain. "You saved both our lives. I didn't even think. I just saw him hurting you and I—" She broke off, gulping air. "Oh, God, Elias, I was so scared. When I saw you fall, I thought—" "I know." He stroked her hair, his own hands unsteady. "I know, sweetheart, but we're alive. We're both alive." They sat there in the blood-stained grass, holding each other while Ghost kept watch, until Clara's shaking subsided enough for them to move. Elias's wound needed tending, and they needed to get back to the cabin before the fourth man returned with reinforcements. The journey back was slow and painful, but Clara supported his weight without complaint, her earlier fear hardening into determination. She'd killed to protect him. She'd been brave when it mattered most, and somehow, in the violence and fear, something had been proven. They were survivors, both of them, and they were stronger together. Clara cleaned and bandaged Elias's wound with hands that had stopped shaking, her movements efficient and sure. The trembling woman from months ago was gone, replaced by someone who understood her own strength. "We can't stay here," Elias said as she worked. "That man who got away will bring back more, and if there's truly a price on my head, then we run." Clara met his eyes. "Together. Clara, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." She tied off the bandage firmly. "You think I'm letting you go alone? After everything? Not a chance. It could be dangerous." "More dangerous than dying in a snowstorm? More dangerous than being beaten by my stepfather?" She cupped his face. "I'm not the scared girl you found anymore, Elias. You helped me become someone stronger, someone who knows she's worth fighting for, so let's fight." Pride and love swelled in his chest. "Montana Territory," he said. "Got a friend there from the war. Owes me a favor. We can start over." "Start over," Clara repeated, liking the sound of it. "A new life. A real life." He pulled her down for a kiss. Together. They spent the night packing, burning anything that could identify them, preparing for the journey. As Clara worked, she caught her reflection in the small mirror Elias used for shaving. The face that looked back was different from the one she'd seen 6 months ago. Still round, still soft, but the eyes were clear, and strong. The mouth was set with determination rather than trembling with fear. "You okay?" Elias asked, coming up behind her. "I was just thinking, I spent so long hating this face, this body, thinking I was disgusting, worthless. But you know what? This body walked through a blizzard and survived. These hands learned to shoot and to fight. This heart learned to love again." She turned to him. "I'm not disgusting. I never was." "No," he agreed softly. "You never were." "I'm beautiful." "You are so damn beautiful." She kissed him then, deep and fierce, and when they broke apart, she was smiling. "Let's go start our new life, Elias Boone. Let's go be happy." "Together," he promised. "Together." They left at dawn, traveling light and fast. Elias knew the mountains better than anyone, and he guided them along paths few men knew, always moving north toward the Montana border. Ghost ranged ahead, alert for danger. It took 3 weeks of hard travel, but they encountered no pursuit. Either the fourth rider had given up, or he'd been unable to convince others to venture so deep into hostile territory. Whatever the reason, by the time they crossed into Montana in early May, Elias was confident they'd escaped. The mountains gradually gave way to rolling foothills, and then to valleys where rivers ran swift and clear. Elias's friend, a former sergeant named Tom Harding, had settled near the Yellowstone River, building a small trading post that served trappers and farmers alike. Tom greeted them with backslaps and questions, his weathered face lighting up when Elias introduced Clara as his wife. They'd married in a ceremony of their own making under the stars one night, with only Ghost as witness. No preacher, no papers, but it felt more binding than any legal document could be. "Got some land for sale about 5 miles upstream," Tom said over dinner. "Nothing fancy, but there's a nice meadow, some timber, good water. You could build there if you're interested." Elias looked at Clara, who nodded eagerly. "We're interested." "You two got that look," Tom said, grinning. "That stupid in love look. It's good to see, Eli. After Mary and Sarah, I didn't think you'd ever—" "Neither did I," Elias admitted. "But life surprises you sometimes." They purchased the land with money Elias had saved from years of trapping and spent the summer building. Other settlers, curious about the newcomers, came to help. Clara won them over with her cooking and her easy laughter, while Elias's skill with tools and hunting earned their respect. There were whispers, of course. Clara heard them, the women wondering what a handsome, capable man like Elias saw in a hefty woman like her. But the comments rolled off her now. She knew what she was worth. More importantly, she knew what they were worth together. By autumn, they had a sturdy cabin with a real floor, a stone fireplace, and glass windows. Clara planted a garden that thrived in the rich soil. Elias built furniture and taught Clara to trap. They adopted a second dog, a stray who showed up one day and decided to stay. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the river, and Clara would sing songs from her childhood, songs she made up, songs that spoke of hope and healing. "You happy?" Elias asked one such evening, his arm around her shoulders. "So happy it scares me sometimes," she admitted, "like it might all disappear." "It won't. We won't let it." He kissed her temple. "We fought too hard to get here." "We did, didn't we?" She snuggled closer. "You know what's funny? Back in Kansas, I used to dream of disappearing, of being invisible so no one could hurt me. But now," she gestured at their land, their home, their life. Now I'm visible. I take up space, and I'm not sorry about it. You shouldn't be. You belong here. We belong here. Together, she said, the word that had become their promise and their prayer. Always, he agreed. Their first winter in Montana was harsh but manageable. They had plenty of wood, preserved food, and each other. Neighbors checked on them occasionally, bringing news from town and trading goods. Clara had become known for her herbal remedies and her willingness to help birth babies, while Elias's hunting skills kept several families fed when game was scarce. It was during a January snowstorm, reminiscent of the night they'd met, that Clara found herself standing at the window, watching the white world outside. "What are you thinking about?" Elias asked from his chair by the fire, where he was whittling a toy horse. "That night," she said softly, "when you found me, I was so broken, Elias, so convinced that I was worthless, that the world would be better without me. And then you," her voice caught, "you saved me in every way a person can be saved." He set down the carving and came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You saved me right back. I was just existing, not living. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to hope." "Do you think about them?" she asked gently. "Mary and Sarah?" "Sometimes, but it doesn't hurt the way it used to." He rested his chin on her head. "I'll always love them, but I can love you too. Love doesn't diminish. It just grows. I wish they could have known you'd be okay, that you'd be happy again." "I think they'd like you," Elias said. "Mary would have liked your strength. And Sarah," he smiled sadly, "Sarah would have loved your stories and your singing." Clara turned in his arms, looking up at him. "Thank you for letting me in, for taking the risk." "Best risk I ever took." He kissed her softly. "Besides, you gave me no choice. You were too stubborn to let me hide." She laughed. "That's fair." "Come to bed," he said, taking her hand. "Storm's not letting up, and I'm tired." "Old man," she teased, "remind me who can't keep up when we chop wood?" "That's different. You're enormous." "And you're perfect." The easy affection, the playful banter, these were the things Clara treasured most. The knowledge that she was loved not in spite of who she was, but because of it. That her body, her laugh, her presence brought joy to someone's life. When spring finally arrived, it brought with it a discovery that changed everything. Clara had been feeling odd for weeks, tired, queasy, emotional. At first, she thought she was falling ill. But when Doc Warren came through on his monthly rounds and she mentioned her symptoms, he examined her and grinned. "Mrs. Boone, you're not sick. You're pregnant." The world seemed to stop. Clara stared at him, unable to process the words. Pregnant. She was going to have a baby. Their baby. Elias. I need to tell Elias." She found him by the river, checking fish traps. "Elias." He looked up, concern crossing his face at her tone. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Everything's so right." She laughed, the sound bubbling up from pure joy. "We're going to have a baby." Elias dropped the trap. "A baby? Clara, are you sure?" "Doc Warren just told me we're going to be parents, Elias." She watched a dozen emotions cross his face: shock, fear, joy, and finally, overwhelming love. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around before setting her down carefully as if she might break. "I'm going to be a father again," he whispered, his eyes wet. I never thought I'd get this chance again." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, suddenly uncertain. "Happy? Clara, He cupped her face, kissing her deeply. I'm terrified and ecstatic and so damn grateful I can barely breathe. Yes, I'm happy. Are you? I'm going to be someone's mother, she said wonderingly. Someone's going to call me Mama and love me unconditionally, and I'm going to get to love them back. So yes, I'm happy. I'm so, so happy. They stood by the river, holding each other, both crying and laughing at once. A new chapter was beginning, one neither had dared to dream of a year ago. In late October, as the leaves turned gold and the air grew crisp, Elias worked on a project in secret. He'd been carving for weeks, using his finest tools and the best piece of pine he'd ever found. On their anniversary, 1 year since the night he'd found her, he presented it to Clara. It was a sign, beautifully carved and smoothed, with letters burned deep into the wood. Clara read it through tears, running her fingers over the words. Elias, it's beautiful. Thought we could hang it over the door so everyone knows what this place means. What it means? That it's a place where love won, where two broken people found each other and became whole. He took her hands, placing them on her swelling belly. Where a family was made. Clara pulled him down for a kiss, tasting salt from their shared tears. I love you, mountain man. And I love you, my brave, beautiful Clara. They hung the sign that afternoon, and as the sun set over their land, Clara stood back to admire it. A year ago, she'd been dying in the snow, convinced she was worthless. Now she stood in front of a home she'd built with her own hands, carrying new life, loved beyond measure. What are you thinking? Elias asked, coming up behind her. That I was wrong, she said. That night, when I told you I was disgusting, I was so wrong, Elias. You were hurt. I was. But you know what? I'm not anymore. Not really. The scars are still there, but they don't define me. She turned to him, her face radiant in the fading light. You taught me that. You and this life we built. You taught me that I was always beautiful. I just needed to see it for myself. And now I see it. Every single day I see it. Elias wrapped his arms around her, and they stood together as the stars began to appear, watching the smoke curl from their chimney, listening to the river song, feeling the life growing between them. To new beginnings, Clara whispered. To new beginnings, Elias agreed, and to the woman who saved a broken man from his darkness. And to the man who taught me I was beautiful, Clara added, finishing their story. Together, they walked back into their home, not hiding, not disappearing, but living fully and loudly and unashamedly. Two souls who'd found each other in the darkest moment and chose to build a life filled with light. And in the spring, when their daughter was born, they named her Hope. Because that's what they'd given each other. Hope for tomorrow, hope for healing, and hope that even the most broken hearts can learn to love again.